Allow me to take you on a journey back in time to the year 2016. I'm 12 years old, I'm homeschooled, and my only pastimes are writing chapter books and reading novels. Every week I go to the library with my mom to restock on the books that I read over the past 7 days. And on this day, I encounter a particular book. I have passed this book every week for over a year. On the cover, there's a picture of a strange girl with way too many braids. The title is The Search for Wondla. Who is Wondla? I assumed based on the cover and the title that it had to be about elves and dragons. There was an inexplicable lore that was way too complicated to cover and to fully understand. The characters had unpronounceable names, and it was just an overall convoluted fantasy book that just really wasn't for me. And if you are Tony D. Terlizzi, the author of the book, I apologize because I'm pretty sure you like those kinds of books. So I don't know what was different about today. I decided to just pick up the book, check it out, and read it when I got home. And upon reading it, getting just a few chapters in, I wondered in amazement, why have I deprived myself from this masterpiece for so long? And then I find out, just a week ago, present day, I'm 21 now, that in 2024, Apple TV Plus turned the book series, the trilogy, into an animated series and nobody told me? So, just a few days ago, I binge-watched the first 2 seasons. Boy, do I have a lot of thoughts about it, but first, I want to talk about the book. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a long time. In fact, it has been such a long time that I have begun to age, and my hair is beginning to fall out.
Just kidding.
I regret to inform you that I will only be in cosplay for the intro of this video, and for the body of this video, you will have to stare at my abhorrent buzz cut, and there is nothing I can do about it because I mailed my hair to Michigan. So the purpose of this video is to tell you about Tony D. Terlizzi's trilogy, The Search for Wondla, The Battle for Wondla, and A Hero for Wondla, and then I'm going to be telling you about the Apple TV show produced by Skydance Studios, and how it gets the story right, and where it goes wrong, and what I liked and disliked about the show. Now, in order to help you understand the Wondla universe, I'm going to basically be telling you the background. Now, when you read the books, spoiler alert by the way, as you read the books, the world is going to eventually make sense to you, and you're basically uncovering clues about the world as you read it, but you're sort of thrown in hundreds of years into the future and you have no idea what's going on. So I will tell you. So the first book was written in 2010. Now, what was going on in 2010 was everybody was panicking about how global warming, pollution, deforestation, and climate change were going to destroy the world and lead to a human extinction, just an entire life mass extinction in the next few years. So this book was sort of a concept of, well, now this has happened, what next? So it's like the present, all the scientists have gathered, they are in distress because all species right and left are going extinct, and they worry about the future of human civilization. One such scientist, named Cadmus Pride, proposes these underground sanctuaries. Human test tube babies will be born and grow and develop in these underground sanctuaries, and they will be raised by robots called Mother, multi-utility task help robot. Now, everybody boos him off stage and thinks it's a terrible idea, but it ends up happening, and as humans end up going extinct, and as all the humans end up dying, and all the animals and plants end up dying, Cadmus Pride's plan does move forward, and sanctuaries are built underground, and there are test tube babies. Now, these test tube babies are either named Evan or Eva. It stands for Earth in vitro alpha because these were embryos implanted into the earth and they grew and developed there. Now, while this is all happening for the next few hundred years, Earth enters this hibernation state where there is no life at all. And now comes, a few hundred years later, the Great Migration, which is led by King Oho. King Oho is this giant butterfly praying mantis looking creature, and he's leading a great migration of aliens from the planet that he was originally from, and they're all traveling there to Earth. They see Earth, and the King Oho has this relic that he's had in his family for many generations. It is called the Vitae virus. It's a generator, and he drops it upon the surface of Earth, and it begins creating plants and new life and new organisms. And then all the aliens end up moving onto Earth, and they name it Orbona. Now, among this migration is a family of 4 Argians. Argians are a species from a different planet, and they have joined King Oho. And these 4 siblings are named Arius, Darius, Loruk, and Zin. They will become very instrumental as the story progresses. Just put a pin in that for now. So the Earth is being overtaken by these aliens, and nobody has any idea of this. Now, fast forward a few hundred years later, I'm going to estimate it's between 800 to 1,000 years after the present day, and we are introduced to 12-year-old Eva 9. Eva 9 is one of these clones who was raised in a sanctuary by her mother, and at 12 years old, she is aching to go outside, but she can't go outside yet until she completes her training when she's 16 years old. But an alien ends up destroying her sanctuary, and it forces her to flee. And now that she's on the surface, she realizes that it is nothing like the Earth she was taught in her safety manuals. So she has to figure out how to survive on Orbona. On the way, she meets a cerulean, which is a type of blue alien, and his name is Rovender. He becomes her guide, and eventually, by the end of the story, her surrogate father. As she is wandering around with Rovender, an alien named Otto, and her mother, she is being chased by a Dorsian named Bastille. Bastille wants to hunt her down and add her to the menagerie of Queen Oho. So Queen Oho is King Oho's daughter, and she has been reigning for about 200 or 300 years at this point. Bastille works for her, and he wants to kidnap Eva, who will be the only human artifact in Queen Oho's menagerie. Now, as Eva is running away, she ends up encountering one of the Arzians, if you'll remember. Now, her name is Arius, and each of these 4 Arzians has different powers. Arius's power is that she can see the future. So she tells Eva her future and ends up giving Eva a little hieroglyph, a little marking on her wrist. This comes in handy because later Eva is kidnapped by Bastille and she is taken to be taxidermized, but while she is in the lab, she ends up meeting another Arzian named Zin. Zin is Arius's brother, and when he recognizes the hieroglyph, he realizes, wait, you've seen my sister, you are actually important, we can't kill you. Eva then ends up meeting Queen Oho. Queen Oho explains what has happened to Earth up until this point, and then Eva is free to go. Eva, Rovender, and Mother end up going to the ruins of New York City, and along the way, Bastille tries to attack them yet again. Mother ends up dying to save Eva. Now, Eva has in her possession this Omnipod. She was given to it when she was about 3 or 6 years old. It's a magnifying glass shaped thing that is basically her Alexa, her OK Google, and she can ask it anything and it will provide her any answer that Google probably would, so it basically has no knowledge of Orbona, so it's kind of useless to her. But Eva uses her Omnipod to record the sounds of a sand sniper's call. Then she replays that recording and calls a bunch of sand snipers out of the sand to come and eat Bastille. Another thing that's important about Eva is since she was a little girl, she has had in her possession some pieces of cardboard that have been her only connection to the outside world, her only proof that other humans like her have existed. So on this piece of cardboard is a picture of a little girl being taken care of by what appears to be a robot and an adult. And Eva assumes that this is a family. She also has the word Wondla written on a few other pieces of cardboard. As you may remember, the book is called The Search for Wondla. Now, Eva ends up finding out when she goes to the ruins with Rovender, which is also the New York City Public Library. She finds out that this belongs to the book The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and that the girl is Dorothy, the robot is the Tin Man, and the older adult is the Scarecrow. Now, throughout the series, Wondla, the word Wondla represents found family. So Rovender, Mother, this other character named Otto, they're all part of Eva's Wondla. They're all part of her family. And throughout the story, she tries really hard to protect her family and to find other people to become part of her family. The first book ends with Eva meeting her first ever human, Haley Turner. Now, Haley Turner is a retriever, which means that he rides in an airship, and he, like other retrievers, looks around for humans who have emerged from sanctuaries, and they take them to New Attica, which is a human settlement on Orbona, the only human settlement on Orbona. So as soon as Eva emerged from her sanctuary, a homing signal went out calling a retriever to come get her. So she really didn't have to do anything. A retriever was just going to come pick her up. But I mean,
then we wouldn't have had the plot of A Search for Wondla.
So in book 2, Haley Turner takes Eva and Rovender to New Attica, and along the way, they meet a character named Van Turner, also known as Evan 6. So that means he would have been the 6th generation of Evans on Orbona. Evan 6 is the sort of clone father of Evan 7, who is Haley Turner's biological father. So it's unclear, but it sort of means that Evan 6 is Haley's biological grandfather. Anyway, Haley calls him Vanpa, and Haley is a completely normal human conceived from 2 other people. Anyway, Haley takes Eva alone to New Attica, convinces her that both aliens and humans live here in perfect harmony, but it turns out it is just humans. While Eva is there, she meets Cadmus Pride. So Cadmus Pride is still around hundreds of years later. He is ruling New Attica. His face is all over New Attica. They worship him like this father who has saved them. While there, Eva meets Jen Pride, who is Cadmus Pride's biological daughter, and Jen Pride introduces Eva to all her friends, who are also all named Jen, and they all look exactly the same, and they show Eva around New Attica. Eva finds it really interesting, but over time she realizes that there are no aliens there. She also tells Jen and the other Jens about the aliens on the surface, and they think she's ridiculous, and they don't believe her. So basically, nobody in New Attica knows what's really going on the surface. Eva begins feeling left out. She goes home at night, and when she's home, she runs into a woman who looks exactly like her, and her name is Eva 8. So Eva 8 is the older cloned version of Eva 9, and Eva 8 has been waiting at New Attica for about 100 years before Eva 9's arrival. Eva 8 convinces Eva 9 that New Attica is actually a prison, so basically as soon as she arrives, Eva 9 tries to escape. Now while she's trying to escape, she finds out that Rovender has been kidnapped, so has Haley, and there are scientists trying to perform experiments on Rovender. There's also another cerulean there named Nadeau, and they have put electrodes inside him to turn him into sort of a mechanical zombie. And then there is a character called a Murthian, and his name is Huxley, and he becomes pretty instrumental in both Book 2 and Book 3. So is that 5 of them? The 5 or 6 of them escape. And Nadeau is dying because all of the electrodes in his body, so they decide that they have to go to the Cerulean village to heal Nadeau. Anyway, while they're attempting to leave, Eva notices Cadmus Pride talking to another Arzian, if you'll remember the Arzians, and that Arzian's name is Lorik. He is the brother of Zin and Arius. And Eva notices that Lorik is quite a bit bigger than both of his siblings and has extra arms and extra eyes, and she notices that's kind of weird. Now she sees Lorik and Cadmus talking to each other, and they're talking about how Cadmus is planning on attacking Queen Oho's castle. I think they're also talking about the Vitae virus, which, if you'll remember, before Orbona began, the Vitae virus was dropped somewhere on Orbona, and that's where all life began originating from, so it's in the heart of the forest. Now, Eva 8 really, really wants to find this heart of the forest. She wants to use the generator as a bargaining chip between her and Cadmus. She has a lot of resentment against Cadmus because he basically promised humanity that he was going to give them a second chance to survive, but all they did was end up living underground and not having a real life. Eva 8 was also separated from her only family, Eva 9, for 100 years, so Eva 8 has a lot of trauma, so nothing would bring her greater satisfaction right now than to have Cadmus Pride grovel at her feet and beg her for the generator. But as it turns out, Cadmus Pride is not as interested in the generator as Eva 8 thinks, or as season 2 of the show would have you to think, but I will get into that. They end up going to the Cerulean village, where it turns out that Rovender is not welcome there because he walked out several years ago after his wife and his daughter died, and his dad is still mad at him for betraying the community. But then they have a whole ceremony where Rovender basically proves himself as a good father and community member because he basically raised Eva as his own daughter, and then he gets welcomed back into the community. And this ceremony uses a bird called a triawa, which enters somebody's mouth. It forces them to speak the truth or speak completely honestly. The triawa will come back in the 3rd book. So now Eva is telling everybody that Lorik and Cadmus are planning on attacking Queen Oho's palace, so they have to go there immediately. But then Eva is like, no, wait, I heard that they want to go to this city called Lacus first, and what's special about Lacus is that is where Arius lives. So for some reason, Lorik really wants to see his sister, and Eva has a bad feeling about this. So they're all planning on going to Lacus, but on the way, Eva 8 just goes completely berserk. She crashes the plane. Eva 9 breaks her ribs, and Eva 8 is like, hey, I have this tunic that can heal you, but if you want it, you have to lead me to the heart of the forest first. So Eva 9 takes Eva 8 to the heart of the forest. The generator has landed inside an old sanctuary, and it has mutated a mother unit that lives there into this great big jellyfish looking thing. So throughout both books, and especially in book 2, Eva 9 is able to telepathically communicate to the creatures around her, and there's all this discussion about how she has a connection to the plants of Orbona and that she's part alien too. She starts talking to the heart of this forest. Now, the heart talks to Eva 8 first and is like, you are filled with so much pain and disturbance, I will bring peace to you. And she turns Eva 8 into a tree. Now, to be fair, Eva 8 can still talk, and she tells Eva 9,
well, thank you, I've never been happier, I've never felt more at peace.
Now, the heart then speaks to Eva 9, heals Eva 9, and then it turns Eva's hair white, increases her power to talk to the forest like 100 times. Eva 9 returns from the forest, reborn. She goes back to Rovender, and they finally decide to go to Lacus again. And when they're at Lacus, Eva looks for Arius, and she finds Arius's domicile, but Lorik has found her first. And Eva ends up going to the top floor, where Arius and Lorik are, and she watches Lorik engulf his sister and eat her, and then gain a new set of arms and a new set of eyes, and that is where book 2 ends. Book 3 is probably the weakest out of all 3 stories. I think the biggest issues with book 3 are the characters spend too much time going back and forth from one place to another, and during this time they all have a bunch of group dialogue to move the plot along, but it's not that interesting. It's much more interesting to show rather than tell, but Tony D. Terlizzi uses the characters in the book to basically tell you what's going on instead of actually describing what's going on himself. There is action, there's a lot more action later in the book, and I will get to that because while this is the weakest book, it does have one of my favorite things that I've ever witnessed in literary history. Eva 9 and Haley Turner are hanging out and living off the land together, and Eva 9 is looking for Zin, who is the remaining sibling of the Arzian quartet. She knows that Lorik is going to go after him last, and she wants to talk to Zin and figure out how to defeat Lorik. So it is an ancient Arzian tradition to engulf another Arzian because all Arzians have powers, and if you engulf another Arzian, you consume their powers and their presence as well. However, Arzians aren't doing it anymore because it's considered rude and archaic and barbaric, and it's just not a thing. It's not, it's uncouth. Anyway, so Eva finds Zin, but she also accidentally leads a bounty hunter to finding Zin too. So that bounty hunter takes Zin to Lorik, and then Eva goes there too, but then Eva wants to go back to New Attica so she can talk to Cadmus Pride and tell Cadmus to stop attacking all the aliens because he's been attacking all the aliens, and he attacked Queen Oho's castle. So she goes to New Attica, but she finds New Attica completely destroyed, and pretty much everybody is dead. She finds Jen Pride, who was her friend in the second book, and Jen Pride is super mad at her. She's like, it's all your fault. And Eva is like, you are an idiot. It is not my fault. Anyway, take me to your father, because I want to tell him to stop doing all of this. Now, she finds Cadmus Pride, and Cadmus Pride is kind of hanging out in a room all by himself. And it turns out that this Cadmus Pride is actually, like, one of the most recent generation of Cadmus Pride clones that go back hundreds and hundreds of years ago to the beginning of the story before all the humans went underground. And Cadmus Pride decides he's going to die there, so Eva takes Jen Pride, and she and Haley take as many humans as they can and bring them up to the surface to rescue them. Now, Eva wants to talk to Queen Oho and tell her everything that's been happening, so she and this other character named Redimus head to Queen Oho's castle. So, Redimus is another Dorsian. He is the brother of Bestial. Bestial was the huntsman who was trying to kill Eva in the first book, but Redimus is actually on her side, and he serves as a bodyguard. So, Eva goes to Queen Oho, and she and Queen Oho have become besties since the first book, and she tells Queen Oho everything that Cadmus and Lorik have been doing, and Queen Oho is like,
No, Lorik is on my side. He counseled me before I became queen. Why would he do that?
So Eva basically shows her a video of Lorik and Cadmus talking to each other about defeating Queen Oho, and then Queen Oho is like,
oh wait, no, you showed me the proof. You're absolutely right. I need to throw Lorik out of there.
But then Lorik takes control of everybody, and then he brings Zin out and says, Zin is a traitor, I'm going to have to punish him, and he publicly eats Zin in front of everybody, gains some more arms, gains some more eyes, and gains more power. Eva ends up leaving for a little bit, but then she comes back, and she's brought a Triawo bird with her, and she tells the Triawo bird to go into Lorik's mouth, and the Triawo bird begins speaking in the voices of Lorik's dead siblings, Arius, Darius, and Zin. So Arius has the power to see into the future, Darius has the power to see into the past, and Zin has an unquenchable thirst for knowledge and understanding of science, and Lorik has military power. And all of his siblings begin speaking through his mouth, and he begins freaking out, and he thinks that they're not really dead, so he starts, like, eating himself to death, and then the big glowing light, and then he dies, and then everybody is saved. So the explanation is, a Triawo bird does not actually make people speak the truth. It has a powder inside it that makes people extremely calm, so that they feel calm enough to share exactly what they think, to speak honestly and openly. But all the characters are saying that it doesn't work on Arzians because Arzians are too complex for Triawas. They're too advanced for Triawas. It doesn't work on them. So what Eva did is actually she used her telepathic powers to tell the Triawa to speak in the voices of Lorik's dead brother and sisters. And that's what convinces Lorik that they're still alive, even though, no, they're dead. They did not actually speak. Eva was speaking through the bird. And that's how Lorik ended up eating himself. Anyway, I have to say, Lorik eating his siblings and then eating himself and that being his defeat is just one of the most epic climaxes I've ever read. Epilogue number 1. It is a few years in the future. Eva is now a late teenager, and Haley Turner has returned from retrieving and going on missions, and he's now ready to settle down. He and Eva have a moment and flirt a little bit, and it's implied that they get together. Epilogue number 2. 100 years in the future. One of the little kids who was a side character in the first book is now a great-grandfather, and he tells the story to his great-grandchild about how Eva saved the world. Epilogue number 3, 200 years in the future. So, when Eva found Zin in the third book at the ancient ruins in the New York City Public Library, there were these giant lichen creatures who communicated to each other through puffs of color. Anyway, in the third epilogue, these creatures are talking to each other and scribing things, and one of the creatures shows another creature he has fixed up the entirety of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Epilogue 4, 300 years in the future. A teenage boy is emerging from his sanctuary for the first time. He encounters some aliens going on a holographic tour. They think he's part of the holographic tour. They realize, oh wait, no, he's not. He's actually a real human who's from an ancient sanctuary. They end up talking to him, and he introduces himself as Cadmus Pride because he is the most recent clone of Cadmus Pride. So Tony D. Terlizzi wrote The Search for Wondla to A Hero for Wondla over the course of 2010 to 2016, but the earliest illustrations for the Wondla characters go back to the late 90s. Now, in 2024, Apple announced that it would be putting the first season of Wondla on Apple TV, and you could watch it if you subscribe to Apple. It was produced by Skydance Studios, which is also known for producing Spellbound, which is a very wannabe Disney princess musical type movie. It's not horrible, but there is something about it that reminds you, yeah, this is not quite 2014 levels of Disney magic. And by that, I'm talking about Frozen, although that's true 2013. But anyway, I watched Spellbound with a couple of toddlers I was babysitting, so I did recognize the style of the animation a lot. I will say that overall, the Wondla show was pretty good. First and foremost, it introduced the absolute masterpiece that the Wondla Trilogy was to a new generation of audience members, or to just a new audience. I actually know somebody in the Netherlands who fell in love with the show, and she'd never heard of the books, and the books haven't even been translated to Dutch. So I'm talking about like a worldwide audience that this show is receiving, fortunately. If you didn't read the book, the show is pretty engaging and really not horrible animation, but if you did read the books, you'll probably be pretty disappointed by the show, and I'm about to tell you why. First of all, I have to give credit to the show. They did a really good job animating. Most of the characters look exactly the way Tony D. Terlizzi illustrated them in the book. I think it's really good that Tony D. Terlizzi illustrated them, because I think otherwise Skydance Studios would have animated them super cheaply and super uncreatively. So I'm glad they look so much like their book counterparts. And I do say most of them because there are some pretty huge changes made to the main characters, and that made a lot of people really upset. First of all, let's talk about Eva 9. I am not one to complain when people race swap characters in movies, but like, why would you do that to Eva? Why did you make Eva Latina or black or whatever ethnicity she's supposed to be? You know, I fell in love with that book when I was 12, and it was also just so cool seeing a character who looked exactly like me, somebody who had blonde hair that was always in braids, green eyes, a mole at the back of her neck. There are always blonde characters being created, but it finally felt like there was a character that looked exactly like me, and that was just so special.
And they freaking changed that.
But on top of that, fine, they race swap her, fine, it's literally so irrelevant, her ethnicity. But then why would they take away her iconic style? They make her suit so boring, they take away her amazing braids and give her this really boring practical bun thing. They also age her up to 16, which makes no sense to me, because in the show she kind of acts 12, and in the book she's 12, so why not just keep her 12? Especially because probably the most people enjoying this would be closer to 12 than 16. The other animation that I really didn't like was Eva's mother. Now, I will say, when Eva's mother unit was definitely animated how I would assume a maternal care robot would be animated. She has this very soft, round, comforting look, and in the book she does look a little bit horrifying, so I would say the way they designed Mother does make sense, but in the book, her creepy appearance just fits the tone of the book so much better than Skydance Studios decided to animate her. Another one that I see fewer people talking about, Queen Oho. In the book, she is the super cool praying mantis butterfly creature who is twice as tall as Eva, who has all these arms and legs and beautiful robes and this cool costume. And in the show, they make her like this furry seahorse squirrel thing, and they made her the same height as Eva. They also altered the timeline of Queen Oho, so in the book it is revealed that Queen Oho was a reluctant ruler, and she was counseled by Lorik, and she really didn't want to be queen at first, but in the show they make her like that to begin with, instead of making her a powerful queen boss lady that she is in the book. And I see what they were trying to do. They were trying to give both Queen Oho and Eva this arc of coming of age so they could be friends and relate to each other, but I didn't really like that choice personally, but that's like a small thing. Another thing I really didn't like that they did was, so Eva is accompanied by a character called Otto throughout the first and the third book. Otto is a giant water bear. So the idea is, on Orbona, all the aliens migrated from another planet, but all the beasts and all the plants there are actually mutated versions of microorganisms that currently exist today. So tardigrades are a microscopic organism that you could probably find in moss outside your house, but in the book, they make tardigrades to be the size of polar bears. So Otto is supposed to be spiny, he's supposed to have a tough keratin carapace, but they make him furry and cute in the show. And he is cute, but he also has a hard shell, and he looks like a bug. He doesn't look furry kind of cute, but whatever. I could not stand the voice acting for Otto.
We have Otto.
Otto better than goldfish.
Oh my goodness, why did they choose to do that? So, Eva and Otto can communicate telepathically, and in the book, Otto gets 1 to 2 word phrases, and he refers to Eva as little one, and because it's telepathic and it's just the voice in someone's mind, I personally heard it as an androgynous voice. I heard it as just a very soothing voice, where it could have been voiced by a deep-voiced woman or a higher-voiced man. They give him this very bumbling comic relief voice acting when it's not clear that Otto was supposed to be the comic relief in the books to begin with, and I really didn't like it because they gave Otto an extremely annoying voice that just made no sense to me. Another thing they did that I really didn't like, the environment and the plants and the animals are pretty accurate to the book. I think they did a great job there, but they completely changed the layout of New Attica, and that makes absolutely no sense to me. So in the book, from what we can see, the few images of Attica, there is this giant pyramid with a picture of Cadmus Pride's face on it, and there are lots of narrow alleys and buildings that kind of remind you of San Francisco, but also kind of remind you of Tokyo, and that was such a cool look compared to this blank white starch mall looking thing that they made it in the show. The one thing I think that they did in New Attica that I did like, that I thought was better than in the book, is, so in the book, Eva hangs out with all the girls who are her age, and she finds out they have way more differences than similarities as they're hanging out and eating dinner together. But in the book, they do this virtual reality video game that is a model of the service world, and the girls don't know that, but Eva recognizes it. But in the game, all the rules are different. You're supposed to kill the harmless animals, and you're supposed to run to the plants that are trying to eat you. And the rules don't make sense, and Eva finds it extremely disturbing that you get points by killing these helpless, harmless animals. And I think that does a really good job of showing, instead of telling, how different Eva is from the girls around her. Other slightly minor who cares differences are, so in the books, the only clones are Eva and Evan, and just anybody who's named Eva or Evan. In the show, they decide that each sanctuary has a batch of 6 or 7 children, and they all have random names, including Eva. So there are a bunch of batch members wandering around New Attica, and they all have random names. In the books, it is only Eva. It's a minor difference. It's whatever, but I thought it was weird. They also decide that every clone is going to be 16 years apart from each other, when in the book, they could be anywhere from 50 to 100 years apart from each other, and I think providing a really long time frame is more interesting than condensing the timeline. The show really does try to condense the entire timeline of Orbona into maybe under 300 years, whereas the books allow it to be possibly 1,000 years into the future, and I find that way more interesting. So the last thing I want to talk about is season 3 of the Wondla series.
I was beyond disappointed.
I already told you that there wasn't too much substance in book 3, but there was a very iconic moment where Lorik eats all his siblings and gains all their powers, and they completely get rid of that in the show. They come up with this ridiculous plot that has nothing to do with the third book. I remember Tony DiTerlizzi talking about how happy he was that Apple TV wanted to take all 3 of his books and turn them into different seasons. And he was like, oh yeah, it feels like all the time they leave out a book or they condense 2 books into one. Well, they did do that. They completely ignored his third book. The only thing that remains the same in the third book is Lorik is the main character and Redimus exists. Those are the only things that they kept about the third book. The first and second season do kind of follow their books for the most part, and they're at least true to the themes, but the third season completely gets rid of it, and I find it so annoying. So book 2 decides to kill Eva 8 off. I think that was a good idea, because there is no room for Eva 8 in the third book. But they decide instead not to kill Eva 8 off. In the third season, she becomes the main antagonist. She takes over New Attica from Cadmus Pride, and she decides that she wants to kill all of the aliens for revenge or something, which doesn't make sense to her character. Eva 8 is not necessarily a good person in the second book, but everything makes sense based on her trauma and her experiences. But going completely rogue just makes no sense in the third season, and I feel like there's no need to turn her into a bigger villain than she already is. They also make the Heart of the Forest the focus of the third season. It's sort of the MacGuffin, even though the Heart of the Forest is not in the third book, because there's no space for it, because there's a whole other plot that the third book is focusing on. Lorik does not eat any of his siblings. I found that to be quite a shame. I don't understand why they didn't do that. It was one of the most iconic things I've ever read in literature, and it made me really upset that it wasn't in the third season. But yeah, Eva ends up killing it with kindness and convincing Eva 8 to stop what she is doing. I don't remember. It was very unmemorable and disappointing. But Eva 8 ends up deciding to jump into this hole that goes to the center of the earth, and she takes the Heart of the Forest with her to bring life back to Orbona, and that is how the third season ends. So, if you read the book, let me know what you thought of it. If you watched the show, let me know what you thought of it. Hopefully you found this interesting. This was a pretty deep dive into this thing that I nerded out about when I was 12 to 13. The Search for Wondla and all those books really, really shaped my teenhood because it inspired me with my own writing. I enjoy writing too, and I was inspired by Tony DiTerlizzi to improve my writing abilities, to improve my art. It was really a core memory for me, and it really shaped a lot of the ways I write now and I describe things now, because Tony DiTerlizzi is an amazing writer and illustrator. I found his website, and he's got so many cool illustrations on it and so many cool plans for stories and plans for stories he drew years before coming up with them. You should definitely check that out. Thank you for watching.